It was 2:14 a.m. when Leila pressed send, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped her phone. The hospital's fluorescent lights flickered above her, casting long shadows across the empty hallway. Every beep from her mother's heart monitor seemed to echo the urgency in her chest. She'd already tried everything, called friends, pleaded with distant relatives, posted desperate messages online. But the hospital's billing office had been clear. No payment, no surgery. Leila sat hunched on a stiff plastic chair, her phone gripped tight, feeling the weight of helplessness pressing in from all sides. 23 years old, broke and alone, she was running out of time and hope. In a last act of desperation, Leila scrolled through her contacts, searching for anyone who might help. She found an old group chat, remembered a kind neighbor who once lent her cab fare, and copied what she thought was the right number. She typed, "Please, I need help. My mom is in surgery and I can't pay the bill. Anything helps." Without rereading, she hit send. Across the city, in a high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus Duvall's phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. Wrong numbers and odd requests were nothing new, but something in the message made him pause. A minute later, Leila's phone vibrated. "I think you have the wrong number." The reply read. Her heart sank. She'd texted a stranger. Embarrassment burned through her exhaustion as she quickly typed, "I'm so sorry. Please ignore this. Wrong number." She locked her phone and buried her face in her hands, too drained to cry. But as the hospital's quiet returned and Leila tried to steady her breathing, she had no idea that her message had landed in the hands of a man whose choice that night would change everything. For both of them. Leila's story was about to take a turn she never could have imagined. The city never truly slept, not even at 2 a.m. In the glass and steel heart of downtown, Marcus Duvall sat alone at a marble-topped desk, the city lights sprawling beneath him like a circuit board. He was reviewing projections for a new tech venture, but his mind was only half on the task. Success had always come easily to Marcus. At least, that's what people liked to believe. They didn't see the empty rooms in his penthouse, the dinners eaten in silence, or the way his phone never rang unless someone needed something. Tonight, the silence was broken by a single buzz. He glanced at his phone, expecting another late-night pitch or a calendar reminder. Instead, a text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Please, I need help. My mom is in surgery and I can't pay the bill. Anything helps." Marcus frowned. At first, he assumed it was some kind of scam. He'd received his fair share over the years, requests for money, fake emergencies, elaborate stories. But something about this message was different. There was no promise of repayment, no details about the supposed investment, no flattery or manipulation, just raw, unfiltered desperation. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the delete button, but curiosity or maybe something deeper made him pause. He read the message again, picturing the person on the other end, scared, alone, reaching out to a stranger in the middle of the night. Marcus replied, "Who is this?" He didn't expect an answer, but within moments, another message appeared. "I'm sorry. My name is Leila. My mom is in the hospital. I thought I was texting a friend. Please ignore this. Wrong number." For a moment, Marcus stared at the screen. He should have let it go. He should have locked his phone and returned to his spreadsheets. But he couldn't. He remembered the months after his own mother's death, the helplessness and regret. He'd had money, connections, every resource available, and still, he'd felt powerless. He opened a new tab on his laptop and searched the hospital name Leila had mentioned. A few quick calls later, he confirmed a patient matching her mother's description had just been admitted for emergency surgery. The bill was substantial, enough to break someone already struggling. Without another thought, Marcus instructed the hospital's billing department to settle the account in full. He didn't give his name, only an assurance that the payment would arrive before dawn. Afterward, he sent Leila a final text. "The bill is covered. Take care of your mom." He put down his phone, waiting for a sense of satisfaction or closure. Instead, he felt something he hadn't in a long time, a quiet, persistent curiosity. Who was Leila? What would she do now? And why did helping her feel so different from every business deal he'd ever made? As the city lights flickered on the horizon, Marcus realized he wasn't quite ready to return to his old routine. Maybe, for the first time in years, he wanted to see what happened next. What would you do if a stranger reached out to you in desperation? Comment below with your thoughts. Leila woke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the plastic chair beside her, her neck stiff from hours spent hunched over in the waiting room. For a moment, she was caught between dream and reality, the memory of sending that desperate text mingling with the sterile brightness of the hospital lights. Her mother was still in surgery. The world hadn't changed, or so she thought. She reached for her phone, bracing herself for another rejection, or worse, silence. But instead, a new message appeared on the screen. "The bill is covered. Take care of your mom." Leila blinked, certain she was still dreaming. She read the words again, heart pounding. "The bill is covered." Her hands shook as she hurried down the hall to the billing desk, the message clutched in her palm like a lifeline. The clerk at the window looked up, eyes tired but kind. "Are you Leila?" she asked. Leila nodded, barely able to speak. "We received payment for your mother's surgery this morning. Everything's taken care of." Leila's knees nearly buckled. Relief and disbelief washed over her in equal measure. For the first time in days, she let herself cry, silent, grateful tears that left her feeling lighter and more exhausted than she thought possible. She tried to respond to the mysterious number, her fingers fumbling across the keypad. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but you saved my mother's life. I'll never forget this." No reply came, but Leila didn't mind. Some miracles didn't need explanations. Word spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses who'd watched Leila's quiet vigil brought her coffee and gentle smiles. The surgeon stopped by to explain the procedure, his tone softer now that the financial burden had lifted. Even the other families in the waiting room seemed to notice a change in the air, a sense of hope, as if Leila's good fortune might be contagious. Hours later, when her mother was wheeled out of surgery, Leila was waiting with a smile so wide it hurt. She squeezed her mother's hand, whispering, "You're going to be okay, Mama. Someone helped us. We're going to be okay." As the first rays of morning sunlight crept through the hospital windows, Leila sat beside her mother's bed, overwhelmed by gratitude and curiosity. Who had helped her? Why? What had made a stranger step in when everyone else had turned away? She didn't have answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. She would find a way to pay this kindness forward, no matter how long it took. What would you do in Leila's shoes? Would you try to find out who helped you, or simply accept the gift and move forward? Let us know in the comments. The days that followed felt almost surreal to Leila. Her mother was slowly recovering, and the weight that had pressed on her chest for so long seemed to lighten with every passing hour. Yet beneath her relief, a new feeling grew. Curiosity. Who had paid the bill? Who had sent that simple, life-changing message? Leila's gratitude was overwhelming, but so was her need for understanding. She tried texting the number again, this time with a simple, "I just want to thank you. You changed everything for us." No response. She searched online for stories of anonymous hospital donations, hoping for a clue, but found nothing that matched her own experience. The mystery deepened. One afternoon, as Leila sat by her mother's bedside, a nurse approached with a gentle smile. "There's someone here from the Helios Foundation," she said. "They'd like to speak with you about patient support." Leila's heart skipped. She hadn't heard of the Helios Foundation, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. She smoothed her hair, wiped her hands on her jeans, and followed the nurse down the hall to a small consultation room. Inside, a man stood waiting. He was tall, dressed simply in a dark sweater and slacks, with kind eyes and a calm, confident presence. He introduced himself as David, a representative from the foundation. "We heard about your situation," he began. "Sometimes we reach out to families who faced unexpected hardships. We'd like to know more about your story and how we might help others in similar situations." Leila hesitated, unsure what to say. She told David about her mother, the frantic night in the waiting room, and the mysterious payment that had saved them. David listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, not just about money, but about hope, fear, and resilience. At the end of their conversation, David handed Leila a business card. "If you ever want to talk more, or if you have ideas about how to help families like yours, please reach out. We're always looking for people who understand what it means to struggle and to overcome. As Leila left the room, she felt a strange sense of possibility. Maybe this was her chance to give back, to turn her gratitude into action. Maybe the kindness she'd received wasn't just a gift, but an invitation. That night, as she sat beside her mother, Leila turned the card over in her hands, the Helios Foundation. She wondered if this was connected to her mysterious benefactor, or if it was just another twist of fate. Either way, a door had opened, and for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to step through. Would you trust a stranger offering you a new path, or would you hesitate? Let us know in the comments. The hospital's corridors had become familiar, almost comforting, as Leila's mother regained her strength. Each day, Leila found herself a little less afraid of what tomorrow might bring, yet the business card from the Helios Foundation burned a quiet promise in her pocket, a door to a future she'd never dared to imagine. A week after her conversation with David, Leila's phone buzzed with a new message. "Hi, Leila. This is David from Helios. We're launching a new outreach program for families in crisis and would love your perspective. Would you be willing to meet with our team?" Her first instinct was doubt. What could she possibly offer a foundation? She wasn't a doctor or a social worker, just a waitress who'd barely scraped by. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized maybe that was exactly why they wanted her. She understood what it meant to be desperate, to feel invisible, to hope for a miracle. With her mother's encouragement, Leila agreed to meet. The foundation's office was nothing like the hospital. Sunlit, bustling, filled with people who greeted her warmly. David introduced her to the team, who listened as she shared her story, her frustrations with the system, and her ideas for making things better for families like hers. To her surprise, they didn't just listen. They took notes, asked questions, and debated her suggestions with real interest. By the end of the meeting, David smiled. "We'd like to offer you a position, Leila. Not as a charity case, but as someone who can help us build something meaningful. You'd work with our outreach team, help design support programs, and connect us with the community. What do you think?" Leila's world tilted. She'd barely dared to dream of a steady job, let alone one where her voice mattered. She thought of her mother, of the anonymous kindness that had saved them, and realized this was her chance to give back. "I'd love to," she said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. The transition wasn't easy. Leila faced skepticism from a few staff members who saw her as inexperienced. She doubted herself too, stumbling through paperwork and meetings, learning the language of grants and budgets. But every time she felt out of place, she remembered the night in the waiting room, the fear, the hope, and the message that had changed everything. Slowly, she found her footing. She visited shelters and clinics, listened to families' stories, and began to see patterns. Gaps no one else noticed, small acts of kindness that made all the difference. She started night classes, determined to become a nurse and help even more. Through it all, David and the team encouraged her to trust her instincts. "You know what it's like to need help," he said. "That's something you can't teach." Leila's confidence grew. She saw her work making a difference, not just in numbers, but in faces. Parents who left meetings with hope, children who got the care they needed, neighbors who looked out for each other. For the first time in a long while, Leila felt like she belonged. Have you ever stepped into a role you didn't feel ready for? What helped you find your confidence? Share your story below. Leila's first months at the Helios Foundation were a whirlwind of learning and discovery. She found herself in meetings with city officials, shadowing outreach nurses, and listening to families who, like her, had fallen through the cracks. The more she learned, the more she realized how many people were quietly struggling, how easy it was to become invisible in a city that never stopped moving. One morning, Leila visited a community health clinic on the edge of her old neighborhood. The waiting room was crowded, filled with tired parents and restless children. As she moved through the line, she heard familiar voices, neighbors she hadn't seen in years, teachers from her childhood, and even the cashier from the corner store. It was there that she spotted Mrs. Ramirez, her former neighbor, hunched over in a faded winter coat. Leila's heart squeezed with recognition. Years ago, Mrs. Ramirez had slipped bus fare into Leila's hand when she'd been short for a ride to school. Now, The older woman looked frail, her hands shaking as she clutched a prescription slip. Leila approached gently. "Mrs. Ramirez? It's me, Leila!" The woman's face lit up with surprise, then relief. "Mija, I heard you were working with the foundation now. I'm so proud of you!" They sat together as Mrs. Ramirez explained her struggle. Her fixed income barely covered rent, and she'd been skipping medication to afford groceries. The clinic could provide a few days' supply, but after that, she'd be on her own again. Leila listened, anger and sadness mixing in her chest. She saw how the system failed people like Mrs. Ramirez. Good people who worked hard all their lives, only to be left behind when they needed help most. At the next foundation meeting, Leila spoke up. "We need to do more than just hand out pamphlets and one-time aid," she said. "People are falling through the cracks. We need a program that follows up, that checks in, that makes sure no one is forgotten." Some board members hesitated. "We have limited resources," one pointed out. "We can't help everyone." But Marcus, who had started attending meetings more often, leaned forward. "Leila's right. We can't fix everything, but we can start by doing better for the people right in front of us." With Marcus's support, Leila helped design a pilot program, community liaisons who would visit vulnerable residents, connect them with ongoing resources, and advocate for their needs. She recruited volunteers from local churches, schools, and even the clinic itself, people who knew the community and cared about its future. The work was exhausting but rewarding. Leila spent long days visiting homes, delivering groceries, arranging doctor appointments, and sometimes just sitting and listening. She saw firsthand how a little attention, a phone call, a ride to the pharmacy, a friendly face, could change someone's outlook. As the pilot program gained momentum, more families began reaching out. The foundation's reputation grew, and Leila found herself fielding calls from city officials eager to learn how they could replicate her model elsewhere. Through it all, Leila never forgot Mrs. Ramirez. She checked on her every week, making sure her prescriptions were filled and her pantry stocked. In Mrs. Ramirez's gratitude, Leila saw the ripple effect of kindness, the same ripple that had started with an anonymous text on a desperate night. What would you do if you saw a neighbor in need? Would you step in, or would you feel powerless? Let us know in the comments. Word of Leila's work spread quickly. The pilot program she'd helped design was making a real difference. Families were getting the help they needed, and people who had once felt invisible were finding support and hope. Local clinics and schools began reaching out, asking how they could join the initiative. Even city officials took notice, inviting Leila to share her program at a council meeting. The invitation made Leila nervous. She'd never spoken in public before, let alone in front of city leaders and reporters. But Marcus encouraged her. "You've lived this, Leila. No one can tell the story better than you." On the day of the meeting, Leila stood at the podium, her hands trembling slightly as she looked out at the crowded chamber. She took a deep breath and told her story, about her mother's illness, the desperate night in the hospital, and the anonymous kindness that had saved them. She spoke about Mrs. Ramirez and the families she'd met, about the gaps in the system and the simple power of showing up for someone in need. As she spoke, the room grew silent. Some people wiped their eyes. When she finished, the city council chair thanked her and promised to look into expanding the program. Reporters approached, eager for interviews, and Leila's story began to ripple through the media. Soon, a local journalist published an article titled, "From Desperation to Hope: How One Message Sparked a Community Movement." The story quickly went viral, drawing attention from national outlets and sparking conversations about healthcare and compassion across the city. With the spotlight came new challenges. Some questioned Leila's motives, accusing her of seeking attention or exaggerating her struggles. Others criticized the foundation, claiming it couldn't possibly help everyone. Leila felt the pressure, but Marcus stood by her, publicly supporting the program and reminding her why they started this work in the first place. Amid the noise, something remarkable happened. Donations poured into the foundation. People from all walks of life sent letters, checks, and messages of encouragement. Volunteers signed up in record numbers, eager to join the movement Leila had inspired. One afternoon, as Leila sorted through a stack of letters, she found one with no return address. Inside was a simple note. "Thank you for not giving up. Your courage gave me hope." Leila smiled, her heart full. She realized that the story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to everyone who believed in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of reaching out, even to a stranger. If you were Leila, would you keep pushing forward or step back from the spotlight? Let us know in the comments. The days after Leila's story went viral were a blur of interviews, meetings, and endless messages pouring in from across the country. The Helios Foundation's phone lines rang nonstop, and donations flooded in, some large, many small, all carrying stories of struggle, hope, and gratitude. Leila barely had a moment to herself, swept up in a whirlwind she never could have imagined. But attention came with its own challenges. The foundation's board called an emergency meeting to discuss the influx of funds and the sudden spotlight. Some members worried about the sustainability of the new outreach programs. Others questioned whether Leila, so new to leadership, could handle the pressure. Marcus stood by her side, his support unwavering. What makes this foundation different is people like Leila. People who know what it means to need help, and who aren't afraid to speak up, he told the board. We have a chance to do something real here. Let's not waste it. During the meeting, an unexpected announcement stunned everyone. Marcus, the foundation's founder and guiding force, revealed he would be stepping down. It's time for new leadership. Someone who understands the heart and soul of this mission, he said, his gaze resting on Leila. The room fell silent. Leila felt the weight of every eye on her. She wanted to protest, to say she wasn't ready, but Marcus shook his head gently. You've already proven you can lead, Leila. You've inspired a movement. Now it's your turn. The board voted, and with only a few dissenting voices, Leila was named the new director of the Helios Foundation. The news spread quickly. Reporters called for statements, and congratulatory messages poured in from supporters and volunteers. Some skeptics questioned the decision, doubting that someone so young and new to the field could steer such a large organization. But Leila focused on the work ahead, expanding the outreach program, launching new scholarship initiatives, and ensuring the foundation's resources reached those who needed them most. One evening, as she walked through her old neighborhood, Leila saw Mrs. Ramirez sitting on her stoop, surrounded by neighbors who now looked to her for advice and support. Leila realized the true impact of her journey. It wasn't just about money or headlines, but about building trust, hope, and community. As the foundation's new director, Leila made a promise to herself, to Marcus, to everyone who had ever felt invisible. That she would never forget where she came from or the power of a single act of kindness. If you were in Leila's position, what changes would you make first? Would you feel ready to lead, or would you hesitate? Let us know in the comments. Leila stood at the window of her new office, looking out over the city as dusk painted the skyline in gold and lavender. The Helios Foundation's headquarters buzzed with activity below, volunteers arriving for evening shifts, staff preparing for tomorrow's community health fair, and families dropping by for support. It was a world away from the hospital waiting room where her journey had begun. Yet in so many ways, it felt like she had come home. Her first weeks as director had been a whirlwind. There were new programs to launch, partnerships to nurture, and an ever-growing list of families seeking help. Leila worked long hours, but every challenge reminded her why she'd accepted this responsibility. She was determined to build a foundation that listened, that showed up, that never let anyone feel invisible. One afternoon, Leila visited a neighborhood clinic to check in on the outreach program she'd helped design. There, she found Mrs. Ramirez, surrounded by neighbors, laughing as she explained how to sign up for prescription assistance. Leila's heart swelled with pride. The pilot program had grown into a network of community liaisons, people just like Mrs. Ramirez, empowered to help others and spread hope. Later that week, Leila attended a scholarship ceremony for students from low-income families. As she handed out awards, she saw her own story reflected in the nervous smiles and grateful tears of the recipients. She reminded each student that their voice mattered and that they too could be the start of a ripple effect. Marcus stopped by the office one evening, bringing coffee and quiet encouragement. He watched as Leila navigated calls, meetings, and last-minute changes with a calm confidence. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he admitted. "You turned one act of kindness into a movement." Leila smiled. "You gave me a chance. I just want to make sure I'm worthy of it." "You already are," Marcus replied. "And you're making sure others get their chance too." As the months passed, the foundation's reputation grew. City officials consulted Leila on new policies. Other organizations reached out to replicate her programs. Most importantly, people in the community trusted Helios, not as a distant charity, but as a partner in their lives. One evening, as Leila was leaving the office, she saw a young woman sitting on the steps, nervously clutching her phone. Leila recognized the look in her eyes. Fear, hope, desperation. Without hesitation, she sat beside her and asked, "How can I help?" The woman explained her situation. A sick child, a lost job, nowhere else to turn. Leila listened, offered support, and made sure she left with the help she needed. Walking home that night, Leila realized her story had come full circle. She had become the person she once needed. A reminder that kindness, when shared, could transform lives in ways no one could predict. Thank you for following Leila's journey. If her story inspired you, share it with someone who might need a little hope today.